You know that feeling when you're online or maybe just listening to conversations and it feels like the volume's just been cranked way, way up?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like everyone's just simmering right on the edge.
Exactly. And the angriest voices, the really furious takes, those seem to be the ones that cut through everything else.
It does make you stop and think, doesn't it? Has outrage become, well, more than just, an emotion?
Has it morphed into like the main way we talk, almost feeling like a type of intelligence or at least being clued in?
That's a really interesting way to put it. This idea that being loud and angry means you understand something better or you're somehow superior in the conversation. It feels like that dynamic is everywhere.
Okay, so let's really dig into this. For this deep dive, we're looking at some fascinating insights, particularly drawing from Philonautica and asking why? Why is outrage so pervasive now?
What are the underlying things making it so prominent, especially online, but not just online?
Right. What happens when getting outraged starts to feel like the normal, almost the smart response?
Precisely. And we've gone through some really good material trying to get to the bottom of it. We're not just, looking at the shouting. We're trying to find the engine driving.
So our mission here is to get past just saying, wow, everyone's angry, and really understand the why, the forces shaping how we see information and what that does to how we, connect with each other.
Okay, so where do we start? Well, maybe surprisingly, with our own brains. The sources point out that just expressing moral outrage can actually trigger dopamine.
Dopamine. Wait, that's the reward chemical, right? The feel-good thing.
That's the one. So firing off that angry tweet or, leaving that furious comment, your brain gives you a little reward for it.
Wow. So there's a neurochemical thumbs up for punishing the bad guy, so to speak.
That's the core idea, yeah.
Yeah.
A subtle positive reinforcement. And it can subconsciously make you, more likely to do it again.
That's wild. So there's almost a biological pull towards it. And then I guess you throw social media into the mix.
And that just pours fuel on the fire. The material we looked at talks about variable reinforcement schedules, like slot machines. Think about the likes, the shares, the comments on a really strong post. They don't come predictably. Sometimes a little burst, sometimes a big one.
So it keeps you hooked, like pulling the lever on a slot machine. You post your angry thought, and you might get a payoff, maybe small, maybe big, so you keep doing it.
Exactly that. It's incredibly effective at building habits. The sources even call it a rage habit. Online moral outrage just feeds itself because the stuff that gets people worked up, especially angry stuff, tends to get way more attention.
It's kind of disturbing that the more visibly upset we are online, the more likely we are to get seen or hurt. And it doesn't stop with the person posting, does it? It ripples outwards, this emotional contagion thing.
Spot on. Emotional contagion, how feelings spread through a group, even without face-to-face contact. The sources mentioned studies where they actually manipulated people's news feeds.
Seriously, what happened?
Well, people who saw more negative posts started posting more negative things themselves. The mood, the negativity, it just transferred.
You see that all the time, don't you? Some big name goes on a rant and bam, your whole feed is echoing it. Or even just a friend's angry post can shift the mood. It feels so easy to get swept up.
We're really susceptible to it.
Yeah.
And as the source material really stresses, technology, so especially algorithm, has basically turbocharged this human tendency towards anger.
Because the platforms, they're built to keep us engaged, right? And unfortunately, conflict, strong emotions, they're really good at grabbing our attention.
That's the core business model for many, yeah. Engagement is king. And the algorithms learn that fiery content, divisive stuff gets people clicking, commenting, sharing, so they show us more of it.
There was that study, right, on Twitter, comparing the normal algorithm feed to just a straight chronological one.
Yes, exactly. And the engagement-based algorithmic feed had significantly more outrage. I think the numbers were something like 62% versus 52%, a noticeable jump.
That really shows the algorithm's effect. It creates this loop. Angry stuff gets boosted. We see more angry stuff. We engage more, maybe get angrier ourselves.
And it feeds back into the system. The example given about that short video platform is pretty scary, too.
The one pushing young users towards anger and blame.
Yeah, where hateful content apparently quadrupled really fast for some users. It shows how quickly these algorithms can amplify the negative stuff.
And even when platforms try to do good things like prioritizing meaningful interactions,
it can backfire because outrage often sparks debate, even if it's hostile debate. So that angry post denouncing someone, it gets tons of interaction, shares, comments.
Even if it's just people yelling at each other. So the algorithm sees engagement and promotes it.
Precisely. It creates this perverse incentive. Yelling about the enemy gets you attention, gets you approval within your group. The data even showed adding moral or emotional words to a tweet boosted its spread by like 15-20% per word.
Wow. So using those loaded words gets you more reach. It's a reward system.
It is. The intermittent rewards the likes, the comments coming unpredictably. It taps into the same psychology as gambling, as addiction.
So, okay, brain chemistry rewards it, social media amplifies it with unpredictable rewards, but it feels like there's more. Like outrage has become a way to, I don't know, signal something socially.
Absolutely. That's a huge piece of it. Outrage is now a kind of social currency. You show how strongly you feel about issue X, and it signals you belong to group Y. It can even raise your status within that group.
This is the virtue signaling idea, right?
Often, yes. Where the performance of moral indignation is maybe more about showing off your own righteousness than actually, solving the problem or understanding it better.
So a lot of online political talk isn't really about persuading anyone on the other side.
Not at all, usually. It's more about telling your own side, hey, I'm one of you. I feel the right way about this. I belong. The outrage is the membership badge.
It makes me think of Orwell, 1984, The 2 Minutes Hate.
It's a compelling parallel. Directing all that fury at the designated enemy to show your loyalty. The difference now, maybe, is that it's often user-generated and then algorithmically boosted rather than just top-down.
Right, and this strengthens the U.S. versus them feeling.
Massively. Strong in-group identity makes the out-group seem like more of a threat. So condemning the outsiders, loudly and angrily, becomes proof of your loyalty to the in-group.
And in that kind of environment, nuance just dies, doesn't it?
Completely. Trying to be cool-headed, analytical, seeing shades of gray that can look like weakness, or worse, like you're betraying your side.
So you have to be loud, certain, and angry to show you're committed, which seems connected to another point from the source, this rise in, anti-intellectualism.
Yes, that's another major current feeding into this. A kind of cultural drift away from valuing expertise, reason, careful analysis, and towards prioritizing gut feelings, emotions.
You definitely feel that. Like, trust in experts has just plummeted. And reason is painted as cold, elitist, maybe, while following your heart or your gut instinct is seen as more authentic.
Exactly. It taps into classic anti-intellectual trope. Emotion versus reason. If it feels right, it is right. That kind of thing.
And knowledge itself gets devalued unless it has an immediate payoff, like making money or something. Anything that requires, patient thought or complex understanding gets pushed aside.
In that climate, loud certainty just beats quiet knowledge most of the time. And again, the platforms reward that, don't they?
Yeah.
Short, emotional bursts over, say, a long, reasoned argument.
Definitely. Much easier to go viral with a hot take than a detailed analysis.
And there's a warning in the source material about this, from a psychologist, I believe. Societies that start valuing emotion over reason become much more vulnerable.
Vulnerable to what?
Manipulation.
Yeah, to manipulation.
Right.
If people are mainly running on emotion, they're less likely to critically vet the information they're getting. They're easier targets for narratives designed specifically to provoke anger or fear, even if those narratives aren't, true. And all of this, the brain stuff, the algorithms, the social signaling, the anti-intellectualism, it leads to what the source called a crisis of shared reality.
Which might be the most worrying part. We're increasingly siloed off into these echo chambers, these information bubbles, where different groups aren't just disagreeing on opinions, they're operating with completely different sets of facts.
A common ground is just gone.
It feels like it's eroding fast. And when you can't even agree on basic reality, how can you have a productive conversation? You just end up shouting past each other.
So anger becomes the main tool left to assert your version of reality within your bubble.
It seems that way. In this kind of post-truth landscape, outrage is influence. Each angry post helps manufacture and reinforce a specific reality for a specific group.
But what happens when everything is outrageous?
That's the danger. If the dial is always at 11, you get numb. It takes more and more extreme stuff to even get noticed. A neuroscientist in the source warned about this race to the bottom.
A race where everyone's competing for clicks by being more and more outraged.
It's exactly pushing towards ever more extreme, polarized views just to stand out. And in that kind of race, the loudest performers, the most emotionally provocative voices, they win. Not necessarily the most thoughtful or accurate.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap. We've got our own brain chemistry rewarding outrage.
The dopamine hit.
Then social media algorithms designed for engagement, which end up amplifying anger and creating these rage habits.
Right, through variable rewards and emotional contagion.
Plus, outrage being used as social currency, like virtue signaling to show you belong.
Strengthening tribalism, killing nuance.
Layered on top of a sort of growing anti-intellectual vibe where emotion trumps reason.
Making us more susceptible to manipulation.
And all culminating in this fragmentation of reality where we can't even agree on the basics anymore.
It paints a pretty clear picture of why outrage feels so dominant, doesn't it?
It really does. It genuinely feels like, in a lot of spaces, outrage is louder than intelligence, or at least louder than quiet reason.
But look, the source material isn't just doom and gloom. It suggests that actually understanding these forces, the biology, the tech, the social dynamics, that's the first crucial step.
Knowing how the game works helps you not get played by it quite so.
Exactly. Being aware of these pulls, these incentives, gives you a chance to make more conscious choices. How you react, how you engage, what you share, both online and just, in conversation.
So maybe the takeaway for you listening is to think about the value of just slowing down sometimes, pausing before reacting.
Seeking out the substance, the actual information, instead of just riding the emotional wave. Prioritizing reason over that first reflex.
It's definitely something to think about.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you to chew on. In this world that feels so saturated with outrage, what does genuine understanding actually look like? What does a really meaningful conversation feel like?
And, maybe more importantly, what part can you play in actually fostering that? In creating spaces where understanding, not just outrage, can thrive?